Well, among the other issues U.S. senators are focusing on, an effort to remind Israel and the world that the U.S. stands by Israel on everything, even when the president says otherwise.
We believe the borders of Israel and Palestine should be based on the 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps.
This statement by the president, which he has since backtracked on a bit, has led several U.S. senators to sponsor a resolution showing their support of Israel and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with provisions like this, quote, whereas the United States has long recognized that a return to the 1967 lines would create a strategic military vulnerability for Israel and greatly impede its sovereign right to defend its borders. Another provision in the bill, whereas Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu correctly stated that the 1967 lines were not boundaries of peace, they are the boundaries of repeated war. So multiple issues, both domestic and international, that senators can't seem to agree on, not even a little bit. But this is one that's getting support from all sides. Earlier I spoke to Alexander Coburn. He's the co-editor of Counterpunch as well as a contributing writer to The Nation magazine. He told me why he thinks several notable senators were willing to line up behind this resolution.
Well, you saw how Netanyahu was received in the U.S. Congress not so long ago. He was interrupted, 28 times by rapturous applause. That should give you a clue. When the members of the U.S. Congress have the issue of Israel in front of them, they think political survival. They think campaign money. That's it. I mean, the Congress is Israeli-occupied territory. So this time, Lieberman, of course, has been the U.S. Senator from Israel, the prime U.S. Senator from Israel for many, many years. No surprises there, but there's no surprises in the whole spectacle, which is why to expect any political movement to get ever past the U.S. Congress beneficial to the situation in the Middle East is totally impossible.
But let's talk about this. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of these senators, politicians really across the board here in the U.S., they do get a lot of their funding from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. They're a very powerful lobby here, a very powerful group. But there are so many other powerful groups and lobbies here in Washington. Why is it, do you think, that these politicians really feel, I mean, there's got to be some other reasons, ideological or whatever, that they really feel the need to stand in the corner of Israel time and time again?
Well, the ideology of a U.S. senator or U.S. congressman, for that matter, starts with getting reelected. That's ideologically very important to the politician. And they know fully well if they do not vote the way the lobby wants them to, or if they contravene the lobby, their political future might well be endangered. And they're right. There are many examples in recent U.S. political history, going back to President Bush Sr., who annoyed the Israel lobby, and they paid a political penalty. So they may be busy doing the bidding of the oil companies, of Israel, of the auto companies, you name it. But first and foremost, they know that the Israel lobby in their districts has real clout.
But I would argue that President Obama even went further than George H.W. Bush in terms of pushing Israel a little bit, in terms of, especially when he talked about in a recent speech about the 1967 borders. He's gone pretty far, and a lot of people are saying that this resolution, that this bill proposed, is sort of a political game, that this is pushing back against Obama and making sure that he knows that he can't step on Israel's toes. You mentioned the numerous standing ovations. I know I just got back from Europe yesterday, and people there were absolutely shocked. You know, it's one thing for U.S. politicians behind closed doors to support Israel, but to be so blatant in their support, people not in this country, people everywhere else, were extremely shocked that the entire U.S. Congress seems to be in this position. Talk about that.
Well, let's start with Obama. Obama has been careful throughout his entire career, when it really matters, not to cross the lobby. And in fact, right before the election of 2008, he made an absolutely shameless speech to AIPAC. Now, as regards his statement about respecting 1967 borders, what he effectively did in that speech was nullify the possibility of the UN, recognizing the bid of the Palestinians to declare national territory. I mean, These are difficult times for the U.S. Government. Obviously, they have the Middle East in flames. They don't want to seem incredibly partial to Israel, but everybody knows they are. They're trying to do a little bit of a dance to maintain some appearance that they're independent brokers in this. But as they say in America, when the rubber hits the road, they're going to go with Israel.
I had mentioned this before, and we didn't exactly get to it, but, you know, the perception in the U.S. versus the perception abroad. In the U.S., most people have come to accept that this is very normal, that, you know, as it states in the resolution, that it's the duty of the United States to support Israel. People in other countries, including, you know, even in Europe, in the UK, think that this is a little crazy, that especially U.S. lawmakers are so blatant in their support. Talk about perception as it differs here versus the rest of the world.
Well, when you look at Europe, though, I mean, they can say, well, we're not, you know, the U.S. is completely impossible, and try and, but when it came to things like Gaza, practical issues on the ground, the EU was just as bad as the United States. It was absolutely appalling. So when you look at substance in real efforts to drive the situation forward, you have to look not at Europe, not at the U.S., but elsewhere to see any substantive effort to change the situation. I mean, the Europeans love to say that the United States are fanatical and all the rest of it, but when they click their heels when push comes to shove.
That was co-editor of Counterpunch, as well as contributing writer to The Nation magazine, Alexander Coburn.